Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 18th Downtown Design Review Committee. As a precursor, if everybody would silence your cell phones or turn them off. And additionally, we have a very long agenda today, so if everyone would keep their comments succinct, and if someone has already said it, limit it to we're not repeating comments. And with that, first item on the agenda is roll call.
Anthony Black.
Present.
Corey Bates.
Present.
Barry Jones. Julie Kriegel. Present. Deborah Richards. Present. Mariana Sidor. And Rosie Trujillo. Present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Second item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Minutes are in your packet.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Moved by Mr. Bates.
Second.
Second by Ms. Bates Kriegel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3 is cases withdrawn, and there are none. Item 4 is continuance requests. We have one item, DTCA 19-00007. Are there any comments on this item?
Staff has been in contact with the applicant, and they're still working on their redesign, and we're requesting this be continued to the June 20th meeting.
May I get a motion?
I move to continue this item to the June 20th meeting.
Second.
That's Bates Kriegel. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5 is the consent docket. There are no items. Item 6, cases for individual consideration. Item A, DTCA 19-00001 at 14 Northwest 7th Street. Is the applicant present? Thank
Yes. This item was continued a couple of months ago at your meeting, and you requested that the applicant provide the proposal for the replacement structures. And so you will find in your packet the information that they submitted. It is not totally submittal worthy. We don't have setbacks, so we weren't able to complete a thorough review. However, it appears that it would meet the requirements, minimum height requirements, setback, because it's on the property line. That is one of the items. The replacement is one of the items for you to consider when a demo is coming before you. The rest of the staff report contains the information you had before, talks about the fact that this was considered a contributing structure to a potential historic district along the railroad tracks. There is a concern of the stability of the structure, and they had provided information from an engineer, and they clarified the information about the imminent threat, the danger of it collapsing. There was a code enforcement case that has been closed because the building is now secure. With this additional information that they provided, staff still feels the building, has a worth, but there hasn't been any movement toward establishing this district. You can weigh that in with all the factors determining should you approve this or not. And staff has a recommendation in here for recommendation of approval based on the information contained in the staff report. And Larry's here for the
Would you like to
application.
provide any additional comments? Good morning.
Larry Pickering, representing Two Ninjas, and I will here to answer any questions you may have about our resubmittal, the additional information that we provided for a replacement structure. As Laura noted, we're not submitting that for approval. We're just submitting the fact that we are moving forward on a replacement project.
Are there any comments for the applicant?
I'm not opposed to what you're applying for. I figured it's worth. I know that the new design is not part of the application today, but just as I guess a courtesy, because this will come eventually. The only comment I have is the way to be sensitive to how the building faces 10th Street, and to ensure that whatever is proposed addresses 10th Street as a frontage to the building.
It's actually 7th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
7th.
I was going to agree to 10th Street.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So just,
Yeah.
I know that we're not voting on that today, but I figured it'd be better to get the comments sooner than later.
Absolutely, I appreciate that, and we are still fleshing out that design and working on it, but we are moving forward with that project. So, yeah, absolutely, thank you.
If there are any other comments, or if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report.
Second.
That's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B is DTCA 19-00032, Part 2 at 617 North Broadway Avenue. Is the applicant present?
She is. In the staff report, we clarified that we had actually split this project into two pieces, and we itemized all of the work that staff has already approved administratively on the building. The north wall of this building had already previously been painted, which is this wall here I'm showing, and so we've already approved them to repaint that. The request before you is they want to paint. Oh, did you paint it? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It's a light gray. Yeah. If you guys wanted to pass around so you could see the change at all. Sorry. It's okay. So what she's showing is the painting on this wall, which covered up the previous sign that had been on there. And so the request before you is to paint the street side of the building, which is not, it's never been painted. This building was not considered contributing to the Automobile Alley Historic District because of the age of the structure. And staff pointed out in the staff report that the building next door, which due to the age of the structure should have been contributing, but that building was determined not to be contributing because it was painted and because the windows had been changed out. Additionally, the building, the cleaners that's on the other side of it had also been painted, but it was a newer building and that was not considered contributing. I didn't realize until I went out there is some interesting detailing which we've included here in these pictures. That wall right there is this here, and I know there's probably an architectural term, I don't know what it is, for that, and the brick is kind of a neat brick that has like the flex and the iron in it, so there's a lot of color to it when you get up to it. So I will leave it on this one. So in your staff report, and I don't need to reiterate it all, we reference previous projects that you guys had considered for painting unpainted brick. Nothing has had exactly a total facade that hasn't been painted scenario. You've acted on some where the painting took place before it came to you, unfortunately, such as the Paramount building, and that one we're still trying to resolve. Then you had Nick's up on North Robinson where part of it had been painted, and then when they took the awnings off, there was unpainted brick. They thought they'd been approved to paint it, and it ended up coming back to you, and you approved them painting the rest of that because most of it had already been painted. So nothing was exactly this situation. Additionally, staff received correspondence from Automobile Alley Board of Directors, which we included in your packet, and they are opposed to the painting of this. In our staff report, we acknowledge this building, due to age, was not a contributing structure to the historic district. However, the building still needs to be sensitive to the surrounding area and needs to fit in. The interesting detailing on it, I think, is a plus to this building when you have people, in the historic district looking at it, and then it's like, oh, cool, look at that detail on that building. And we acknowledge all the other there are some painted buildings along Broadway that were considered contributing because there weren't a lot of other revisions to the building. but staff feels that strict adherence to this guideline should be followed in this case because you have the historic district and the really interesting detailing and nice brick that was used in this case. And staff recommends denying this application on the basis that the project doesn't comply with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District. Excuse me.
Well, she's a hard one to follow.
Yeah,
we, in the design of it.
do you want to identify?
Sorry, I'm Megan
I know who you
January.
are, they don't.
We are the tenants of the bottom of that building right now. There's a small office above us, too. So the owners are right next door and the cleaners. So when we came up with the design of this, we had the whole thing painted that light gray that I had showed you guys before. We love the detailing of the building, too. That's why we think it would be so much cooler to paint it that really light gray, to update it. It's beautiful, but it's not historic. It's just really dated at this point. And everything that we're doing, we're just trying to make it not necessarily modern and fabbish, but just really classic looking, so it can go with the other. I think in there, the packets, you have the pictures of the eclecticness of the block. I had somebody come out and take pictures. So that is printed, and it makes it look very white, like that other one. It's more of a gray color. I call it a grayish because there's still a little bit of brown in there, so it can pick up on the green of Larry's building next door there, and then the gray next door, since we have two painted next to us. And I will say, even with the character, we've had people literally stop at our door. That's not, it's our awning's changing, obviously, and come in and bob their head in and actually thank us for the color that we painted that wall and how awesome it looks, including people with the businesses around us and changing that too, because they really appreciated how nice and clean it looks in that area and brightens up the area because it gets a little dark and dingy right there too. So, but I appreciate the feedback on everything like that, and I said we won't have hard feelings either way. We just think it'll really clean up that look and make it a little bit more updated since it's a little dated. And since it isn't historic, we thought it would look really cool.
Okay, let me get back.
Any comments or questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I'm not really opposed to this, I don't think. This is a 1960s building?
83.
Oh, 83, so it would have been much newer. And I think the painting it, you'll still be able to see the detail of the brick. All of the buildings on that block are painted or a light brick color, so they're not the red brick. I don't know, the one on the far left. No, it's not. It's like a stone facade.
Oh, that one, the one on the end? Yeah.
So, yeah, I just wanted to make this point. I think because it's not one of the historic buildings, I think you'll still be able to see the brick texture through the paint, and that, yeah, I'm not opposed to this.
I share staff's position on this. To me, it's pretty clear that, we have a guideline stating that masonry that was not traditionally painted should not be painted. And going and standing next to the building, looking at the brick, it's in good condition. And with that, I don't see any reason to paint the brick in line with the guideline.
Any other comments?
I just think of how even it was built later, it was meant to be bricked and not painted. I think that it's a trend now, gray walls. Mm-hmm. It will eventually go away because everything kind of passes. But I think, brick in the downtown area is timeless to me.
Yeah.
So I think that, in essence, that's really the purpose of it, to be brick and not be painted. So just what I think.
Just for clarification, so I'm understanding, what is the regulation concerning painting brick so that I'm clear about what it is that is going to set a bad precedence moving forward?
It's a guideline, not a regulation.
Guideline. Thank you.
And so it's something that we bring to the committee. And so it's,
The committee adopted a supplemental guideline called the Building Conservation and Rehabilitation Guidelines, and it says, this is on page 3 of the staff report, masonry that was not painted traditionally should not be painted. And it outlines, because brick has the water protective layer, and it could seal in. I mean, so far we've talked about an aesthetic concern, but there's possibly a technical concern with concealing moisture and then ongoing maintenance of the paint.
Thank you. That answered my question.
For me, it's really a combination of things. One, I do believe that if the brick was there and it hasn't been painted yet, that it'll always remain at its current level of excellence by remaining brick. But if it gets painted, then it's going to deteriorate over time, and it's ultimately going to become a maintenance issue, which can be addressed in different ways by different property owners. So I too side with staff on this with respect to the brick, since it hasn't been painted, and especially being downtown, I feel like it was better remaining brick. If there are...
No, my only comment was that, I understand the two buildings beside it are gray, but we have to put it in respect to the whole automobile alley, which is dingy and dark in your words, because it is brick. That's the essence of that.
Oh, no, just this building and that, not the bottom.
I know, but that's my point. And if anything, I agree with Rosie. I'm so tired of seeing gray buildings.
And it's it is a gray. There's beige, like it's an in-between, but yeah, I totally
Right,
get
it. I think it stands out more because it's not going to match or be so similar to the rest of these buildings. I just think, considering its location on Broadway, we need to respect that the brick that was designed with, and I just think it would be just sad to paint that, frankly.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move to deny the application on the basis that the project does not comply with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section D of the staff report.
Second.
That is a Bates-Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you guys for your time. You guys have a good day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, item C is DTCA 19-00037 at 26 Northeast 10th Street. The application present. Thank you.
So this is a request for a mural that part of it has already been installed, and it's a wrap. So this is not paint on the brick, this is a wrap. We've had, to a small scale, at the bus depot downtown, or the bus transfer station, they had some signs put up with this type of a material. So the brick is still underneath there. This can be removed and not damage the brick. It can breathe through it. It actually protects it from the UV rays, which is kind of an interesting plus. So what you have in your packet, and I'll point out here, this part of the mural is already up. There's another piece that they want to put up here, as well as a piece that goes in the top. We worked with this applicant for quite some time to try and make this a mural and not a sign. And so they actually made some changes, and we're very excited they were able to make that work. And part of it is on the west wall around the corner, as you can see. So with a definition of a mural, up to 10% of it can identify the artist or can be used for the sponsor. And so that's what we had to do. So all the non-mural stuff adds up to no more than 10%. So the graphic artist's name is going on it. This has been before the Arts Commission, and it did get approved. And so let me get to, this is the way it looked before any of that went up. And the other thing that you have in your packet is we have a limitation on how much windows how much the windows can get covered. They're only supposed to have things on 20% of the windows, and this totally covers the windows up. You can see out from the exterior, but one of the concerns is you can't see into the building. But in the documentation that the graphic artist provided us is people are stopping all the time, and they're talking to them, and they're getting their pictures taken in front of it. So this is actually doing what we want to do with people when they can see in windows, is it is engaging the pedestrians. So these two squares are the pieces that are there. This is what's going to be added on the building that's on the east, and then on the peak, this little triangle up here. And then there's a little area that's getting added in this place, and you'll see that's 9.8% is the non-mural portion. And staff is recommending approval, and it's really happy we were able to make this work out. So with that being said, if you have any questions for me.
Hi, Commission. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple questions. The portion that's been installed to date, is that already approved, or is that part of what we are?
That is part of what you are. That was installed prior to any approval, which is why we've been working with them for about a year.
I would love to speak to that if I can.
Yeah, they probably will give you an opportunity to do that. So this actually did start out as a code enforcement case, and it has worked. This is what we want them to turn into a positive, so we could actually get this thing to work out.
So our review today is
for the whole thing.
All or nothing.
Correct. We reference that in the staff report. So you're to review this as though nothing is there, although you can actually see how part of it has turned out.
And then the portion that's considered advertising, is that still not considered signage? Because it's
correct, because the definition of a mural references they can have 10% that can be a sponsor, which can be the business that it's on, which the artist, which is the graphic artist. So what you're looking at here is where they provided me with the math so that we could agree with what is going to make up this 10%. So you can see we've got a small area here, we've got a small area here, and an area here which is the sponsor and the graphic artist's information.
Okay.
Right, so the word Oklahoma was not considered a sign because it's not the name of the business and it's not advertising.
Well, and I would say the name of the business is Oklahoma T-shirt company, and that is what threw us initially. But by them adding the scissortail, which is the state bird, and we have, and I can't see it, but somewhere on here is the shape of Oklahoma. I think right in there. This on this side is actually a map of downtown Oklahoma City, so this is they turned it into a mural, so it was not considered totally advertising because of the link to the state.
Okay. Last question. Do we have any guidelines that reference street-facing murals compared to typically we would see murals on the sides of buildings and not necessarily on
the guidelines are the same, back, front, or side.
Okay.
Excuse me, I have a question about the maintenance. So when y'all went out to look at this, what's up there, how's that been working?
It was fascinating to me because I got really, really close. I couldn't get it good in pictures because I wanted to see how it was fastened, and it looks fine. It's not tearing up. It's not. Somebody's disagreeing with me.
Yeah, actually, they're.
Did you find something I didn't?
The northwest corner of the building, you can actually go right at the sidewalk, and it's kind of tearing off at the corner.
How long has it been up?
It's been up over a year now.
I'd say close to 2.
It's
been up a long time.
While it is, it's a small portion of the corner, you can see how it's not affecting the brick.
Okay, that's good.
That portion that's coming off, the brick, there is no adhesion between them, so what's underneath is the brick as it was before.
Okay, you said northwest corner, so you're talking about over here?
Yeah, right, that corner, right at ground level.
Okay.
that corner.
Well, since the professionals will be coming back out
They will.
to install the new one, I'm sure a note has been made, and she will have them look at that to make sure if it needs to get fastened back down that they can. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Commission. My name is Tess Brenner. I'm Executive Coordinator over at Oklahoma Shirt Company. Initially, I would love to speak to, I realize this is up already. It was up before I jumped on board. Our fearless leader, Justin Lawrence, is an innovator, a creator, an entrepreneur, but not necessarily a rule follower. And he's got me now. So that's why we're here. I worked very diligently with Laura and her team to make sure that we were fitting in specs that were beneficial to the community and the council. We are really excited about this mural. It has been drawing a lot of attention. Since I've worked with Laura, we are currently pictured on the Thunder Jumbotron as well. Currently having sleepless nights as we're printing the Thunder playoff shirts. So it has just been really awesome to have this as a picture and a piece of pride for the state of Oklahoma, and that was the intent behind the mural from day one. It's unfortunate indeed that our title name, Oklahoma Shirt Company, also carries the state name, so as far as signage goes, a little bit of discrepancy there, but the intention all along and to be carried through with this edition is Oklahoma pride, a place where tourists and Oklahoma locals can take a moment to embrace it and have a social media moment with it and just liven up downtown with a little extra spice.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? I applaud the fact that the process has worked so well. I think it's a creative way of taking something that started off maybe a little challenging, but rather than pushing back against it, the collaborative teamwork that caused you to get to this point. And I understand the social media opportunity that's here, and people get excited and they start advertising for you. I think it's well done. I like the way it's done. I like the fact that we're specifically classifying it as a mural, and it already has Arts Council approval, so we're not setting precedent for individuals to do this in a different way. And I think that it looks good. I like the way it all has been developed.
Thank you.
I move that the application be approved on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinances referenced in Section C and D of the staff report.
I'll second that.
That is a Jones-Richards motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. So item 6D will be DTCA 19-00042 at 914 Northwest 9th Street.
This is the day of murals and painting brick. So this is a request, and I'm sorry these are so dark, but actually they kind of look this way when you're out there. This is a request to put murals on the north walls of two apartment buildings that's up on Northwest 9th, that if you didn't know they were there, you'd miss them, because they're set back off the road, there's trees at the street, and currently this has not been painted. This is not in a historic district. The intensive level survey in this area indicated this was a non-contributing building due to the age. The Arts Commission has approved this. The buildings were constructed in 1982. It's a smooth brick. It's not articulated. There's no detailing on it. And as I said, they kind of just blend in. And staff's view was this mural on it could actually be very inviting and kind of activating the street as you walk by. This area, we've got a lot of development that's going on across the street, the entire block. There's nothing left, everything's been demoed, but at some point, there will be development coming in. The block to the east has a new project. It's half in Cottage, half us. The Cottage piece, they've started construction on that. So this is 2 blocks from the hospital campus. And staff is recommending approval of this one. And I wanted to reiterate, this is in a different scenario. This is not an historic district. It's not a contributing building. There aren't any contributing buildings around it. And the artist is here if you have questions.
Any questions for staff? Would you like to make a statement?
Yeah, my name is Nick Bear. I am the artist proposing these murals, and really what we were just wanting to do is just to revitalize the urban landscape and create a sense of place for the people who live at this apartment. The imagery itself also ties into the narrative of the people who live there. So we're depicting a rowan on that building, and the rowan is tied into Celtic mythology as a sense of strength, and traditionally was planted outside of dwellings to as an idea to protect them. So we just thought this was a great way to symbolize that on the building where people actually live. And there's 2 walls, and one wall actually depicts a small family of birds living in a nest within that tree itself. So everything kind of ties together as far as the narrative of this is at apartments where people live, and we're trying to just create a sense of place for them.
Any questions or comments for the applicant?
Just a small detail question. Those walls currently have the addresses to the building on them.
That's correct.
Is there a plan for?
The plan is to move them above the mural onto where the roof is pitched.
Up there? Okay.
So they'll be actually even more visible.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to say that I'm grateful that there's people actually thinking of putting murals up instead of just painting, and making it more of a scene for people to walk by. I think it's pretty genius to bring more people around the area. It's really wonderful to see this approach and continue it. So I the era of murals and paintings, I really like it. Coming from, I don't know, I guess I'm more thrilled to see that happen more and more, for people to come and make it a stop, like a destination point, if you want to think of it as Oklahoma. So I think that if the right idea is there, instead of just painting gray walls. So, thank you.
I realized that a part of the Arts Commission meeting, there had to be a maintenance plan, and I read what was written. It was a little bit vague, but a little bit maybe broad brush, what we received. But I think it's important to reference the fact that in these instances, whenever brick that wasn't unpainted is being painted in a mural application under the arts umbrella, that it does have a maintenance plan in place, and that's specifically a part of the how we evaluate this particular item. And if there aren't any other comments, I would entertain a motion.
Let's do it. I move that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report.
Second.
That's a Kriegel-Jones motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
So item 6E is DTCA 19-00043 at 431 Main Street.
I'm recuse my vote because I'm part of the FSB.
Thank you.
Now we start on the first of 3 applications for similar request. This is a request for the Arts Garage that some of you might have been on here when it got approved. Okay, if Tony says no, that means none of you were on here. None of you were on here. Okay, I'm sorry. This is a request for signage. There has been an issue with letting people know, this is a parking garage and it's open for public parking. It's a good problem to have, but we have all the buildings on Main Street. They're built up to the street. And when you go north on Hudson, you can't see, there's currently a sign, and it's a ground-mounted sign. You cannot see it until you're into the intersection. So they had a proposal for adding some signage. We had a lot of pictures. There's a lot of information about the work staff did with the applicant. So they're requesting a sign that's both on the south side at this location as well as the north side, and you can see that both scenarios, they're a little different. The one on the south side, you got the building right up on the property line. There isn't a lot of room between the curb and the drive path, versus on the north side, you have a significant amount of room because we actually have a park here, and so there is space, more space. You're not totally confined between the sidewalk, the building, and the sign. So in the staff report, we discussed the concerns that we have at the different locations. They're proposing freestanding signs because they feel they'll be more visible at 39 foot tall, which is quite large. This is the same sign that was installed on the Sheridan Walker parking garage that at least one of you parks in on a regular basis. So you might identify personally with maybe that's easier to find now because it just doesn't have the round sign. It has this shape of sign. And so they're also branding the parking garages so people know, oh, that's what that sign means if I see it because I know it's here. Staff included discussion of some concerns that we have about the location, about the impact on the pedestrians. If you're walking down Main Street and you have a 39-foot tall sign on one side and a 5-6-story building on the other side, and you start feeling a little hemmed in and shorter than normal, and we want the pedestrians to have a good experience walking down the street. So what you will find in here is staff actually supported the location that you see here on Colcord or Patience Lighting. I always forget what the name of the street is out here, because there is so much space and where the sidewalk is. The sign is actually between the travel path and the sidewalk, not between the sidewalk and the building. So we support that location. It is in the right-of-way. They do need a variance for that. However, on the other side, we're wanting to continue to work with them. We were hoping they could come up with a scenario where they could actually attach it to the building so it wouldn't have as big a negative impact on the pedestrian. In the staff report, we recommended this location be continued for 2 months. However, you will hear from the applicant that they really want it continued to next month's meeting, and they know that we have to have everything by next Tuesday. So with that being said, you will see a very detailed what we're recommending approval of at the end of this, what we're recommending continuing, and then you obviously have the separate motion that's for the Board of Adjustment, and that meeting is actually this afternoon. So do you have any questions for me?
Do we know if, so this sign type is currently installed at Sheridan and Walker, the garage?
Yes.
Are there any other locations of this sign type?
No.
Okay.
Well, on our parking garages, that is, and I thought I had a picture in here of that. That is the only one that we currently have, and that was installed last year.
Yes,
That is strange. Okay, I know it's in here somewhere.
It's at the very end.
At the very end? Okay, thank you.
Slide.
Yeah, that, because they provided some, and then we had taken one the other day. And so it's on both the Walker side and the Sheridan side. They have 2 of those with the little round P on the top.
But it's also mounted to the building.
Yeah.
Yes, that one is mounted to the building. The building's a little different design, and you actually can walk up to from the inside and see it because I've looked at it that way. So it's the exact same sign, but freestanding on a pole. The other thing that I'll mention is They were wanting not to have to do landscaping, and we kind of talked about in the staff report, the one that we're continuing, we'll probably have to circle back around to that one. Staff was okay with not providing landscaping there if ultimately that's the location, because that streetscape doesn't have landscaping at that location. It's already hard paved surface. But on the north side, initially they thought they needed a variance, but they had enough points with existing landscaping. So,
Any questions for staff? Would you like to present?
Morning, everybody. My name is George Marquez, FSB Project Manager, representing CODPA. So the purpose of the project was due to public comment. And like Laura indicated, it was the public basically calling up CODPA and, them not knowing that they can actually park at these garages. 3 garages in particular being the Arts District, which is this case, Century Center, and Cox Convention. And so the sign will be the exact same size as the one on 1 North Walker currently, with the exception that it will be a pole-mounted sign. So we are in concurrence with staff report, and we also are in concurrence with continuing item 1B to the May agenda in lieu of the June agenda. And we do understand that we have to have everything in to them by next Tuesday, and we're currently working on that.
Do we have any questions or comments to the applicant?
A couple questions.
Sure.
On the design of the sign itself, so
Right.
It makes sense that the basis of the design is the one that was installed at the Sheridan and Walker Garage.
Right.
To me, it seems like that sign was literally taken and used for the design here. The difference being building mounted a couple stories up, and then these signs being then pole mounted.
Correct.
Was there any consideration of alternate designs for this sign, considering that it's a different application and a different contextual scale, moving from a sign that's building mounted up in the air versus something that's on a pole at ground level?
So in looking at that, what we wanted to do is basically provide consistency throughout all the garages, and that's the reason why, in agreement with CODPA, is we wanted to keep the sign the same, because in that way the public, it keeps all of the garages basically the same, indicating that it's public parking, if you know what I mean.
So, personally, I think there needed to be some consideration of a change in contextual scale, that taking a building mounted sign and just putting it on a post at ground level is not, actually, could we go back to the last image?
this one?
That there's a consideration that needs to be made in the process. Specific to the coal cord location, I have trouble with, one, the scale, but the location of this. When you look down coal cord, the location is almost dead center on the street, shown in this image. And to me, that's a little, I don't want to say misleading, but it's not, I don't think it's achieving the goal of directing people to the garage itself. Here, it looks like a sculpture, actually, that's intentionally aligned with the center of the street. And then if we go back to the previous image, on the right, there is a wall-mounted sign that says park on the garage. Is there any reason why not put the new sign as a wall-mounted, a builded-mounted sign in its place?
So the intent of the signs is high visibility to motorists. And so we thought that if we mounted it to the building, it wouldn't be as visible as if we brought it closer to Cold Court Avenue.
Well, wouldn't that just be a study in height on the building? I mean, the ones at Sheridan and Walker are effective.
Right. And so what we're trying to do is capture motorists coming in from the west into this area. And so trying to mount it onto the building, we just don't think that we can capture those motorists, because it's so inset. And so that's the reason why that sign was brought out to the curb.
Looking at this view, I think you would definitely see it mounted to the wall there, this picture. And also, I would hope that that area in that park would be used for public sculptures. So I do have some concerns about mounting it like right in the middle of that view.
Okay, this is the current sign, right, George? Is that what I got my
That is
hand
the
on?
current sign,
Okay,
yeah.
I wanted to blow it up so you could see the current sign.
Which is white, and so are similar to the building facades. And I think that blue signage is something that people identify with, like traffic signage and things like that. So even just making that parking sign blue would help a lot.
Well, and I think it's just a study of height. I mean, it's a 8 or 9 story garage. Similar to studying it here in this perspective, you could see what height on the building it would need to be placed to be above the trees and still provide visibility to the west.
I agree with you on consistency. In fact, when I drive around and looking for a parking lot, and the first thing I look for is my brain basically trying to resolve, where's a parking garage, and just kind of filter what have I seen in the past.
Right.
So it's great, but I do see the issue of keeping that place for maybe a sculpture, maybe that being wall-mounted, and have that to where you can have it visible from one direction and then the side. Make it a box, and that way you have this visibility from one side and then the sides or whatever, from 3 different sides, if you must. But it does look like a sculpture.
Right.
So I'm confused which way I'm going. Am I going, which one is the parking lot? Because it's respending. So the other ones that are wall-mounted are basically telling me, go here. This one I'm a little confused as a driver. Am I going, which one is it? Okay, until you get there, you turn, or you get there and go. But otherwise, I would see it as a sculpture from far away.
I agree with what's being said, that especially with this one picture was, of all of the ones that we're hearing today, this was the one picture that when I saw it, I wasn't immediately drawn to where I would want to go. Until I saw the next picture, it was a little easier to see, but I think as the trees behind this grow larger in scale, the contrast of the blue against the white is going to go away, and that the sign on the building would actually be greater. And like what was said, right now this is being kind of put in a place that is absent of anything, and it's going to then make it to where nothing else can go there, where it can remain a blank canvas for something in the future. For this particular garage, I think that if applications in which they can be attached could be achieved, I think they would be more successful than ground-mounted signs.
Right.
Yeah, I agree, and I also, just the other locations, I think that they should all be wall-mounted. And is there a big issue with taking, the sign could even be smaller if we took out the word public, or there's just, it's incredibly confusing if we just have the word parking. Like a lot of parking garages that I've parked in just say parking.
Part of the discussion that we had is, especially on Main Street, there is now a parking garage that's been built, but it's private. And so people are getting confused, what's open to the public, what's not open to the public. And so when we had meetings and discussion, they felt very strongly, we need to let people know this is public parking. Anybody can come and park here. You don't have to have your pass to get in.
So I wonder if there's, when we think about like signage for roads and stuff that are a specific color, I wonder if I guess I don't know for sure, but are there certain colors that are associated with public signage, like for street signs and highway signs, all that kind of stuff, that could indicate just in and of itself that this is public? And even that, maybe not.
When the Sheridan Walker Garage sign was first submitted, it was submitted in a different color scheme, and we So we did research on our end to see, well, there must be an international standard for colors and fonts for public parking, and we could not find one.
I think when we talk about the scale of it, personally, I feel that once you take that sign down off a building and put it at ground level, there needs to be a consideration of the design of that and the scale of it. And I think you could keep it blue. I think you could still say public parking, but maybe it's not vertical in its nature. Maybe it is something at ground level right at the entry that has a presence. The sight lines are studied. The blue is there. The public parking is there. I think there are considerations to be made on what to do at a ground level rather than just taking a wall-mounted design and putting it on a post.
But if the goal is to see it from down the street, it's down there on the ground, it might be too hard to see. I absolutely think it needs to be consistent with the other signage around the city, blue, public parking, and I'd like to see it on the building as opposed to right there, especially in that location. That's just, as they've all said, it looks like a piece of art or where art should be.
Right.
I think
we can certainly do a study and try and provide renderings to see what it would look like on the building. And we're currently looking on the south side on how to mount it to the building as well. So it's an easy task that we can look at and see if it would be a feasible one.
I think as you look at that, identifying a brand and a logo is still going to be important, and your P with the circle and the blue, the dot, kind of like a metro stop or another type of just consistent, to where if somebody saw that, they would know. It would start to just be second hand. They would know that. If you had signage that was of different proportion based on how they were applied, then that P with the circle and the blue background could be your brand and logo. But I would agree about the wall-mounted signs.
Okay, I wanted to blow this one up since you guys, we were concentrating on the one on the north because this one we had recommended be continued anyway, but they did provide us some photo sims, because that's been some of the discussion is staff was really hoping we could get these on the building and not be in the right-of-way and they wouldn't need the variance for that. But in some cases, they're totally blocked by trees or other buildings. And so speaking as someone who's worked in other parts of the country where you end up with trees getting topped because people want their signs seen, that's not what we want to have happen here. The trees are really healthy and they're growing uniformly, and the street looks really great. So that's part of the discussion that we've been having with them and trying to come up with a solution.
Maybe the sign needs to be lower, under the canopy, or we have the same issue with all of any retailer that's on a street with trees. We wouldn't want them to put their sign, way out in front of the trees. So I think, a study of how that might look lower too.
Laura, there is a monument sign here that says parking. Can you point to it?
Correct, right. It's here, and the sign is actually under my hand, and it matches the sign that's on the north that's fastened, attached to the building. Both of those signs were proposed to be eliminated with the new signage. So they do have one there, but they actually put one underneath it because that one at that height, which I think is 10 feet tall, is hard to see because of the trees from Hudson at the intersection.
It also seems to be a matter of color choice and a little bit of diminished contrast between white and blue. So do we have, if there's other comments?
I wanted to say something. This morning when I pulled up here, the first thing that I was looking was, should I park to that other parking lot that you mention all the time? Or should I just park where I park all the time? And I was just like, well, and I just drove by that sign. I was like, no, I'm just going to park in the public parking where I always park. And that's the first thing that I noticed, actually. I was like, there it is on that other side. So it's like, I think that consistency is great. I think that, I went around and actually I didn't mind passing by it and seeing it, like, you know, I saw it, and I had to turn around and come back. So I didn't mind looking at it right there in front of me and turning back just to go back in there and park in it. I think that because of the trees growing, yeah, they're there, you can't remove them, but I think the consistency of it was what drew me personally, back to park there instead of just go back and look for the parking lot where we're supposed to park with the ticket or whatever. So it's like, no, I'm going to park here. So, just saying.
So, Tony, I think what I'm hearing the committee wants to see, and George, you've agreed to provide additional studies of a different location and size, building mounted and freestanding, or just building mounted?
I think there's I mean, for me, if it's this design of a sign, that sign at its scale is meant to be on a building. I think being on a building above the trees gives you the longest visibility without having something so massive at the pedestrian level. I think to your point, Tony, about the P in a circle, you know, it also doesn't have to be one sign. I mean, there's a solution where at ground level, you know, it says public parking, you know, really where you want people to drive in, and then on the building is just your P. You know, so I think there's other ways to accomplish the visibility without taking a building-mounted sign and putting it at ground level.
I would like to reiterate that point as someone who only comes downtown for meetings, and that's pretty much it. I have twice tried to park in private parking to find out that I could not. Signage for me for public parking is really important. I don't have recommendations of what's appropriate, but I really believe that if it's going to be a service that we're going to provide to the community, then we definitely need to really think about what that signage looks like and how that signage does direct people to those parking areas, so individuals like myself are not struggling trying to figure out whether this is a public parking lot or a garage or a private parking garage. My hope is that we could go back and maybe do a little more research and study to find a more comprehensive plan, because I agree, I think there may be multiple ways to provide signage and what the signage look like that would better serve the public that, again, on an occasional basis come downtown looking for parking.
Yeah, we can absolutely study that and see what other different solutions we can come up with. Again, the intent of this was to basically have it all consistent throughout downtown, because then right away, motorists, you know, in their head's going to click, hey, this is public parking. In lieu of trying to, you know, differentiate different designs at each location, which I'm not sure how a motorist would react to it.
If we continue this case on both the north and the south side, do you want to have us continue that to the May meeting?
Yes.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move to continue the application to the May meeting.
Second.
As the Bates-Kriegel motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item 6F, DTCA 19-00044 at 1 Myriad Gardens.
Okay, and so before we start this, we looked uniquely and individually at each one of these sites, so some of the discussion we just had will be applicable, but I kind of wanted to go through this. They're all different because of how far from the street the parking garages are, what street they're located on, how grown up is the streetscape, if at all. So this one for the convention center, and I'm sorry, to me it's still the Myriad Convention Center, I keep forgetting that, and that was way before everyone's time. You can see the location here. This is for the on the west side and where they're proposing to put it, and this is directly across from Myriad Gardens, and then That's that same location. And the other one is on E.K. Gaylord, which is definitely a much busier street. And you can see the location of where they're proposing that sign to be located. Let me just say that we had several meetings with the applicant. There was a lot of discussion. They provided a lot of additional information because staff's intent was, can we get these out of the right-of-way so that you don't need a variance? Can these be located on the building? In both of these cases, the buildings are set back so far from the road, you lose a lot, unlike the last one we looked at, which is right on the property line. So with their need to identify the location and to attract the vehicles, this is where you need to pull in. I wanted to point that out because each one of these is different. So it's the same height, the same style, located in the right-of-way, so obviously they would need variances for if they were located in the right-of-way. I believe we got landscaping work done on both of these, or is one still? Sorry, I have to, okay. So.
Oh, no, I correct myself.
Yes.
The one on the east, we are providing landscaping.
That's correct.
The one on the west, we're not.
The one on the west had a lot of concrete around it, and it really wouldn't lend itself well to, that's actually this one, wouldn't lend itself well to having to provide the amount of landscaping to meet the point requirements, and it probably wouldn't stay alive anyway. So staff actually supported that variance request, not only for both of them being located in the right-of-way, but for this one not having landscaping. The one on the other side will have this one will have landscaping. And just to point out, there's signage that is being eliminated, like this one right here, that will go away with this proposal. And you can see there's the location, and they will be adding landscaping to that one.
Any questions for staff? Or any supplemental information from the applicant? Or is it basically the same?
Yeah, so on this one, it's pretty unique because we did actually study trying to mount these signs onto the building, but it would be a very challenging task to try and tie that sign onto the Cox building because we would actually have to brace it back onto the roof. And, you know, all that bracing, you're going to be able to see it. And so it just wouldn't, you know, look very aesthetic. And that's the reason why we're trying to pull that sign near the entrance and closer to the street so that we can capture all the motorists, you know, that are driving along E.K. Gaylord and on the west side as well.
I actually want to say that in this area location, the signs don't disagree with the location. As with the last one that we just discussed, the location kind of didn't agree with the sign being in the middle of, you know, a beautiful place where we would rather see a sculpture.
Right. But,
you know, to me, this is a great location for the parking to the signs. The background is not conflictive with them at all, to me.
I agree with Rosie, especially on the east side where you have the loading bays. It's kind of hard to figure out exactly where you're going to pull down into the parking garage. So I actually think that to have that there is good. It would be too far recessed if you do try to put it on the building. Right. So especially on the east side, I think that's a good move. And I don't really think it's out of proportion on the west side either, and considering the amount of traffic there. So I don't have a problem with this one.
I agree that the location of these makes sense, especially given kind of where the low wall is, where you go down. But I'm inclined to see what, you know, if you do choose to make a larger P or something like that for the other sign, and look at kind of the way that this might be reworked for a freestanding sign, because actually, you know, the garage is like down and horizontal. It almost would make sense for this signage to be in a more horizontal orientation. And the only reason, so I think if it's going to be consistent with what might be reworked for the other ones, it might be worthwhile to look at this one too. But I'm not, and is this sign taller than the building? Is this sign, how tall is the building?
I'm not sure.
It's just
On the height of the
also
building.
just huge. I know it's important for people to see the parking, but it just seems like such a priority here.
I'm not opposed to the locations. I still have concerns about the scale of both of them. And, in this image, and if you go back to the previous image on this image, the scale maybe looks what it is in this image, but, the truck on the right is probably 6 feet tall. And in the section on the detail of the sign, the bottom of that G is at 10 feet. So I think that this sign is going to be much bigger than what's being represented in this image. Because right now it looks like that G is somewhere around maybe 6 or 8 feet. So I don't have concern about the placement. I still have concern about a sign that's building mounted up on a building being 26 feet tall, just literally taking that and putting it on a post, a 10-foot post at ground level. If this sign is out in front of the trees, does it still need to be 39 feet tall? It just seems that the scale at the ground level is out of proportion.
There's an image in our packet that shows the signage on the east side with the new landscaping that's been installed. And in that image, it's a brand new, that one, just prior, 2 back, that one.
That one?
There's a brand new tree that's been planted, and it appears like it's not going to be too long, and the way that these trees are going to grow, that sign is going to be totally obscured from the far away driver, and you're wanting to catch the near driver who will then see it. I'm thinking that, once again, your consistency is going to be in color, font, and your brand. And I am not saying that your brand is the P with the circle and the blue and the white letter, but it seems like the trees are going, the tall sign is made to catch someone who's very far away. And when it comes off the building and it gets into our tree zone, when those trees become mature, like some of the trees that are mature around this area, some of the old pistache trees that are in the islands, that sign is going to go away in the summertime, and you're going to have resort to having to put something in at ground level. And if that's the case, then that's maybe the study that you're talking about looking at now. So I entirely agree with the location of this one. It seems completely appropriate. I would not put this one on the building, because once those trees become mature, it won't be seen by anybody. Right. But I feel like its proportion is setting itself up to be obscured when the trees become mature. Would you, if it starts heading in the direction of continuance again, is that something that you would entertain? I realize each one of these are a case-by-case basis.
Right. Yes, we would continue it.
I just wanted to ask the question.
To May.
To May?
Yeah,
okay.
to May.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I would like to say thank you for you guys being so cooperative. I know you guys have put a lot of work and effort into this, and we do appreciate it. The feedback and the input that we're providing hopefully is helpful, and my hope is that when you do come back in May, that maybe this time is provided maybe a little bit more information, that you can come up with something that really is going to be positive and really provide a great signage for the community as they try to find public parking in downtown Oklahoma City.
So I've got a question for Corey and Tony. So the pole itself that is sitting on is the sign is raised so far off the ground. If that were just put down closer to the ground, would you feel that is an acceptable height then? Because I'm trying to figure out, is it, what, a third of the 39 feet?
Well, let me reference something that there's an ADA clearance.
Height, yeah, the clearance.
And which is 8 feet, so
Right.
you can't,
Yeah.
I know where you were headed, but
Yeah.
you couldn't get it down as far as you would want to get it down because of that.
Right, but you could get down a monument sign, something
You could.
that was not on a pole.
Right, if it's not a pole and it was more a monument sign, that's allowed.
Right, yeah. If the sign itself came down to the ground as a monument sign, that would be acceptable.
Okay, so, but the ADA clearance does not apply to sidewalk?
Well, we were referring to the fact that since this is a pole sign, the issue is if things are wider than the pole, that's where that separation distance is required if it was a monument sign, so it has a base. So in other words, let's just say this sign was 4 foot wide and it was solid all the way down, it was 4 feet,
Right.
then we wouldn't have that problem.
Okay.
It would look kind of strange, but we wouldn't have that problem.
Okay.
Before the motion, I think that what you're doing is very effective. It reads parking. I think it's going to achieve exactly what you're trying to do, and it is tastefully done, and it's very attractive. I think once we get through these nuances of scale and what's going to happen in the long term after the landscaping flushes out, that you're going to have a very successful infrastructure.
Appreciate that.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move to continue this application to the May meeting.
Second?
So Robert Spates' motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Item DTCA 19-00045 at 100 West Main Street.
Okay, there's only one sign at this location. As you can see from this aerial view, the proposed location. What's unique about this building is the fact that it actually is not a straight facade, and there's actually the curve that comes out that really blocks it. If you're driving down the road and you're looking, because you can see, looking east, how the building comes out. So that would get extremely interesting if you wanted to talk about building mounted by the entrance because of where the entrance is located in relationship to that curved part of the building. So let me get back to these. So you can see how the entrance comes in kind of on the west side of the curve of the building off the road there, and they're proposing the sign to be located right where my hand is, right there. And let me get to here. So we have this location. So here is the private entrance on the right, and here's the public entrance on the left. So they both, normally it's not like that, they're both right there together. And so obviously the sign at this location is next to the public entrance. And so here's a close-up. So here's the public and here's the private. And they do have signage on the building for that. And they're proposing right at this location, which would be between the sidewalk and the building, to put the sign, which you can see here. So there was discussion once again with them, can you get it on the building, that type of thing. And staff didn't feel that that would actually work out very well here to try and get it. Plus the ownership is interesting on this building, which makes it extremely complicated. Where can it actually be if you propose it on the building? Because this is not all one ownership on the building. So that got factored in as well. So this particular one was only they need a variance for it being located in the right-of-way. The landscaping, they're not asking for that. It will be provided.
Any questions for staff? any additional information?
Yeah, so in this one, we did provide photo sims of the sign actually being mounted on the building. And any motorists coming in from the east would not be able to see it whatsoever because of the building that's adjacent to this building. It just comes out further than the entrance to this garage. And the motorists coming in from the west, well, due to the angle of how this sign would be mounted to the building, wouldn't be highly visible. That's the reason why we were trying to bring it out, so that motorists can see it from both the east, approaching from the east and approaching from the west. And like Laura mentioned as well, this building has multiple ownership, and so that would be a challenge to try and get buy-in from the other owners.
Do we have a proposed image from the west with the current landscaping, like this one from the east?
I don't believe we have one from the west. Oh, with...
Yeah, we provided.
Well...
I don't think they're in this slide.
In the packet, let's see, where, no, that's... I'm not seeing an image. I'm seeing the architectural drawing showing the landscaping that's proposed. But I don't have a photo sim image in here from that direction.
I was curious because I saw the slight angle cant of the public entrance to see if it was primarily a right turn only situation, but you clarified that this is right and left turn. I think
Yes.
with these trees, you have set yourself up to where you will not, this sign I don't believe is going to be seen in the summertime from the west. I think that it's going to be obscured by those oaks to the point that a lowered sign would actually be able to, because of the fact that you've got the drive lanes, giving you so much clearance for anybody who's coming from the east, that you could do a really substantial lower, if applicable and approved, lower sign that still captured color font and your branded element, and might be able to get more throughput than this scenario that would probably only catch eastbound traffic.
Right.
And I don't have a photo sim. I knew I took a picture from the intersection, so I wanted to get to that intersection to speak to, Tony, what you were talking about, because I think this is the view you were talking about when the trees leaf out and get
Right.
bigger.
And if you move over into the eastbound lane of this particular shot and the perspective pushes those trees closer to the building, I think it will fully obscure that sign.
So is there a building-mounted sign right now, that circular?
There's only a P that's mounted,
Well,
and that's on the east.
There are, let me go back.
Yeah, you should be able to
Sorry.
see it.
There is a,
It's the international P symbol. You could, if you go back one slide.
And then there, yeah.
You can just
oh, there it is,
see
right there?
Right there, right.
There's a
And
P
then
right
there's-
there.
And then there's a distinction above the entries.
Correct, that's
which
what
one is
these
public and which-
bands are right in
Right.
here.
So with the multiple ownership of the building, is there a compromise that could take place where there is a more enhanced building-mounted parking sign that when you drive up, you have then those clarifications about which is public and which is private?
No, what's currently there describes, what's public, what's the public side and what's the monthly parking side. But that would be it. I mean, we wouldn't provide anything additional to what's there already.
The other thing I wanted to point out is there is I don't even know what kind it is, there's an enormous tree right here. That is not out at the street. There's this really strange planter that's back up at the building, and that tree's gotten a lot larger than I thought it would, given the confines of where it's located, but it looks really healthy, but that totally blocks anything you're going to put right there. And I'd hate for the solution to be, well, then that tree needs to go away.
I wasn't clear, but I guess I was suggesting getting rid of the sign that's there and having something up higher on the building that is just parking. And so you get this attraction of people coming to park, and then it's when you pull into the drive that you make the distinction between getting into public and private parking.
I was noticing the round parking, is it circle above that one?
That one.
So maybe if there was one similar to that in blue to represent the signage that is already, in proposal, to kind of keep it consistent, but then you make that choice, well, this is private, this is public.
Right.
And maybe have, have something horizontal at the front where people can actually see that it's public parking instead of having the signage vertically. Maybe create something horizontal, similar to what you already have, to have an option to where in places where you can't have something this tall and obscured, then be at ground level and then be reinforced with something else on the building itself.
Okay.
I'll ask the same question. In the event that this is heading in the direction of a continuance, would you want that to be on the May agenda as well?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. If there are any other questions or comments, would somebody like to present a motion?
I move that we continue this application to the May 2019 meeting.
Second.
There's a Kriegel-Bates motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. So item,
I will be recusing myself from the next item.
thank you. Item 6H is DTCA 19-00046 at 1204 North Hudson Avenue.
This is actually Lisa, but if we might want to wait until...
Sure,
so she can hear everything, yeah.
And is the... Okay.
This is a new hotel project at 11th and Hudson. It's right by one of the new streetcar stops. The staff report, we identified a couple of issues, some related to the setback off of Hudson Avenue. The building is currently set farther back than what's allowed, so that would need a variance. DTD1, the sub-district this is in, has some of the most restrictive signage provisions in terms of number and size. So even though staff believes the signage is relatively modest, there's still too much of it. We've identified those issues. In terms of guidelines, there are some angled columns there. You can see them at the ground floor that we're not convinced how the base of those is treated in terms of pedestrian safety. There's also a large expanse of brick wall on the south side that we thought could be more open. And then we were a little worried about the brightness of the neon sign facing west because it's right across the street from an apartment building. So we've recommended approval with a lot of conditions relative to circling back around with staff to do some design tweaks or to provide more documentation. With that, I'll let the owner and architect present.
Great. Thank you, David Wanzer, with Pivot Project and Neighborhood Establishment. This is part of a larger purchase and acquisition that we had done a couple of years ago. So we also have developed the property directly adjacent to the north with the revitalizing 3 buildings with Elk Valley Brewery and Resolution Legal, and then a market food hall as well. And then we also have a 15-year lease on the parcel on 12th, which is the old Foodies building. Most people know it as that. It's a little diner. So we have that parking lot and that small building under a long 15-year lease. And then this is the corner anchor of this entire development on a streetcar stop, as mentioned, which is one of the things we found very attractive. So Chris Pardo, our development partner and designer, is here, and I'm going to let him take any specific questions in regards to that. A larger
Do we have any questions for the applicant? I'll start with the question that was in regards to the angular columns. There'll just be a little math study to determine how we fall within the 80-inch and the 4-inch projection. Is that currently being studied, and will that be brought to staff for some kind of a consideration?
Yeah, that will be brought to staff. We are looking at that, and there's a few solutions, including, like they mentioned, we do landscaping down below as well. It is inset off of the sidewalk, so we might pull landscaping all the way off of the building to those columns.
And then your concrete surface, what is the finish on that surface? What is it? Is it a
portion?
Yeah, is that a
board form?
It's going to be, so are you actually going to see the grain
You will.
of it? You're going to
Yeah.
see all those ties? Okay. And I was just curious with respect to how it might represent itself as other materials.
Yeah, we're hoping to have texture illustrated.
And then the only other thing, with respect to the comment about the larger expansive brick wall, is that being studied in some
that's
fashion?
actually, so it's in the south wall to the left of the glazing that you see there. And it's, what we did there, it's actually a screen, so there's glass behind it, so at night you'll see the light coming through it. And I'd like to keep that, but I'll work with staff on how much of that area happens. But it's a feature that we did on the west side as well on the second floor, so it's like a glowing box, basically.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I mean, I think that the design of this building looks really nice and appropriate, given kind of the quality of materials throughout the whole project, the setback, although it's, staff approved or recommended approval for the setback, but it also works really well with the street because you're sort of defining that property edge with these columns and the awning, but allowing that space between the actual facade and the edge of the awning and the columns to be sort of a public and welcoming space, so I think that works. The size of the signs also seems appropriate to the scale of the building, and I can understand why a large building like this may have, multiple tenants where they need signage for each of those. So. Yeah, and actually just to build off of what was said about landscaping at the base of those columns, I think that would work really nicely as well and build off some of the other adjacent landscaping on some of the other properties, well, at least what's shown in this image, and complement any roof landscaping that you have at the base. So.
You also show landscaping up on top of your concrete form.
We do, yeah, landscaping on the entire south side and west side, as well as the back north-facing deck.
And so, it's the plant materials themselves. This is concrete below, this is masonry behind, this is an image that's it's obviously going to take on a lot of heat. Has that been consideration?
We're working with our landscape designer right now on the type of plantings, and we'll submit that through the staff level.
Will landscaping be submitted as a different, or are we doing landscaping review as well?
Yeah, I mean, the only, there are no street trees currently proposed.
We would like to include street trees on the
So the
11.
street trees are yet to be approved. The landscaping at the rooftop, since it wasn't in the streetscape, we didn't really even hardly include it. But other than the planters, there is currently no other landscape.
That's correct.
The rooftop, I think, can be solved with your landscape architect. I was specifically thinking about that zone. It appears to be narrow and in both width and depth. so you're not going to have a lot of planting material, medium soil. So in the event that your landscape architect is really looking at how is it waterproofed, how is it going to maintain the plants that you're going to put into it, I think that's critical, really for the long-term success of what you're intending it to be.
I totally agree.
I think it looks very attractive. And I really like the way that you've addressed the brick forms. I think that that's, it's unique, it's innovative. I like the shadow play. Are you going to have a custom brick made so that you can get a true arc?
Yeah, that's our plan, is to have a custom brick made to achieve that.
So that, I mean, I realize that that's achievable, and it's not difficult. You just have to ask for it. But if it's able to be pulled off, I think it's going to be very elegant.
Yep.
If there are not any other questions or comments, then I would entertain a motion.
And so the landscaping on the ground will just be resolved with staff?
Right, and we put in one of our conditions, B, the applicant works with staff to address the design of the area.
Okay, so I have to read all these conditions.
Yeah, there are a lot of conditions, and then don't forget the recommendation for variances.
Okay, so I recommend to move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the conditions that the applicant receives a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the maximum building setback, the maximum allowable number of signs, and the maximum allowable sign surface area regulations. The applicant also works with staff to address the design of the area at the base of the column. The applicant also works with staff to achieve more facade transparency. Well, I think the facade transparency on the south side is okay based on the matter of screening, now that that has been reviewed. So I'm going to approve the facade transparency. It's okay. Or I'm moving to approve that.
So you're striking that as a condition because you feel it's been achieved.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
The applicant submits one or more nighttime renderings showing the exterior lighting design, including the neon sign, to staff for final approval. And the applicant works with staff to locate street trees, planters, and or landscaping along Northwest 11th Street.
I have a motion.
Second.
So Richards, Jones motions. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And then, there's an item 2.
Yes.
Okay, and item 2 is I move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for variances from the maximum building setback, the maximum allowable number of signs, and the maximum allowable sign surface area regulations.
Second.
Again, a Richards, Jones motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Item 6I. Item 6I is DTCA 19-00047 at 15 Southwest 4th Street. Applicant is present.
Okay, we've done good. 11 o'clock, we're on the last item. This is a request. At your last meeting, you had a request for demolition on this block, you might recall, of the OG&E Gold Building. So this is now the proposed replacement project that's on the south half of that block, which is for a parking garage. I drove by there today. They haven't started demoing the building, but I believe it's any day now that building will start coming down. So let me get to this design. So the proposal is for, as you can see, the south half of the block, a parking structure that would have entrances on all 3 sides. As stated in the staff report, there's a few items that they're actually going to need variances for because of the proposed design. At the presentation that you heard during the demolition, the architect acknowledged that it was designed so they could get a large number of vehicles in and out before events and after events. And so when you look at the site plan, you will, and let me blow this up, you will see when you look at the arrows and you're like, how can those arrows be both in and out? Well, it's designed so that when they need to get a large number of vehicles in, they'll be in, and when it's out, they'll be out. So they actually have some lanes that are going to be changing, and lanes that are designated for interior and exterior. So there is a minimum one-way drive aisle width of 12 feet per code, and they are proposing drive aisle widths of 10 feet and 9.5 feet. So none of the lanes, individual lanes proposed meet the ordinance requirement, so they're going to need a variance for that. The other item that you saw in the staff report is there's a maximum width of, overall width of 30 feet. And so they are proposing, this one here is fine, but all the rest of them are wider than 30 feet, and they'll need a variance from that regulation as well. And so that's also discussed in the staff report. While we're concerned with the impact on the pedestrian experience because you have these overly wide drives, staff feels there is solutions that could help with that, alleviate that scenario. We referenced one that I've actually never seen before that's around the corner over here at Main and Hudson, where there's actually a pedestrian traffic light on the sidewalk at an exit from the parking garage. So that is one we mentioned here, which is a possible option. So we had a recommended condition that the applicant actually work with us on that. We referenced the fact that the narrow lanes, narrowing them down could be concerning. However, they're not going to be going that fast. And, you know, it's not like it's 50 mile an hour or even a 30 mile an hour because they're entering and exiting. So from that standpoint, the narrowing down could actually be, could work and achieve what they're trying to do, which is get the traffic in and out as rapidly as possible. One of the things I'll say is when they reduced those, they were also trying to reduce the overall width. So they literally have the narrowest overall width, if that makes any sense, because they reduced those lanes down as much as they could. So they did everything they could to try and work through our restrictions on the width of the drive aisles as well as the overall width. Another item that staff was concerned about deals with landscaping over here where my little hand is, which is on the east wall, which is adjacent to EK Gaylord, because it is open at that location, and so they needed to screen it. The proposal that they provided that I referenced, it is not shown on, I hate when this happens. It's not shown on the individual drawing plans, but it actually is shown on a, on one of the, the renderings right there. They were proposing some bamboo, and staff's not really enamored with that, and so we're recommending that we have a condition that they work with us and we come up with a non-bamboo solution for the screening at that location. One of the concerns is, you know, we want 12 months of a year screening, and you're not going to get that from the bamboo. So we feel there's got to be a better solution out there. So staff was recommending approval, and I'll just reiterate the items that subject to conditions that they work with staff to address pedestrian movement across the access exit driveways. They work with staff to study the screening of the parked vehicles from adjacent right-of-way. They obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the maximum overall width of driveways and the maximum width of individual driveways, and then there would be the separate motion with the recommendation for approval to the Board of Adjustment.
Any questions for staff?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Anthony McDermott. I'm the project architect. And I think we would just like to, well, let me introduce Corey Hubert. Corey manages the parking operation for COTPA and is basically my point of contact. We have a rather complicated ownership structure for this piece of property. The actual owner of the property is the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust. But what we anticipate is that that COTPA eventually will own the property once the demolition has taken place. So that's why you see the applicant as OCEDT and not COTPA. But the garage serves a rather unique function in this corner of the new developments that are taking place at this location. It will serve the convention center, of course. It will also serve the Chesapeake. It will serve the Omni. It will serve the mixed-use development that's just to the north, and it will also serve the park. We anticipate it would serve the park for events that are attracted by the amphitheater or large organized events, programmed events in the park. So it serves it potentially serves a lot of vehicles, and it serves a lot of vehicles that are coming and going at the same time. So that's why you see the multiple lanes in and out. The driveways that Laura refers to are actually the gates, and the gates we're proposing 9.5 to 10 feet wide, which is actually typical for a parking garage. So, and we realize that that's not under your purview, and that we will go to the Board of Adjustment for that. I think, Laura, if we just scroll through the...
Back, do you want to just go through the renderings?
Sure.
Stop me if you want to say something about one of these.
We can just start at the start and scroll through them. And
Okay. I'll just...
Hopefully you know the location of the garage. It's actually on it's between E.K. Gaylord, formerly Shields, and Old Broadway, 4th Street to the south, and Broadway is going to be reconstructed on the east side of the convention center that we call New Broadway. It'll probably just be called Broadway. We call it New Broadway. So you can see that the south entrance exits from the garage line up with what will be the new alignment for Broadway. The east entry exits are directly onto the southbound E.K. Gaylord, and then on the west onto the old alignment of Broadway on the east side of the new Omni. So it's shielded pretty much by all the development around it, but it serves a very important function for parkers, particularly the assigned parking and the event parking that we know is going to take place in the garage. It's 1,100 spaces capacity, expandable to 1,400. So we keep. Oh, and you can see the landscape components on the east, west, and south side. The south side, I should probably mention, will conform to the Project 180 standards, that regime. The east and west sides are not. There's not enough width there, right-of-way width, to accommodate the Project 180. So we've customized the plantings on the east side and the west side. The southwest corner of the garage is the main entry and egress for pedestrians. So I think early on it was pretty obvious that the southwest corner of the garage is where we would like to direct pedestrians. It's where the vertical circulation, the main vertical circulation is. So we have 4 elevators that serve the 6 levels of the garage, and they're at this location. There will be stripe pedestrian crossings going west, east-west, to the north side of New Fourth, and then north-south to the north side of the convention center. Here you can see our landscape architects renderings of the landscapes on the corners and around the entrance and exits. As I mentioned earlier, the south side is the Project 180 standards, but there's additional planting between the building and the sidewalk. On the south side, where we had enough right-of-way to do that. On the east and west sides, we didn't have enough right-of-way to conform to the Project 180. So you see the planter beds or the planting landscape beds there. These are just examples of the plants that are intended.
And this was the specs that you provided.
Right. So these are just associative images that show you that the stairwells on the corners. There's a stairwell on the northwest corner, on the northeast corner, and the southwest corner, and they all have a considerable amount of glass between the stairs and the public domain. We don't have a whole lot of brick on the project, but we are intending to use some masonry on the first floor and on the corner. And the stairwells will get a unique treatment that we haven't landed on completely, but they will be uniquely treated so that they stand out from the parking structure itself. We have a unique concept for and this is, I think, where you probably, your main area of interest is what we're going to do with the walls of the garage or the facades or elevations of the garage. Right now we're working on a system of either colored glass or colored plastic squares that will attach to vertical tension cables, cable tensions. The design of they will be colored. We've been working with the city on a concept whereby an artist would design those walls. So the pattern or image of the walls would be determined by an artist. We have a 1% art requirement for the project. And so we're pretty excited about the opportunity to provide a very attractive, very artistic, very unique and impactful elevation to the garages. We were the architects on the Arts District garage, and as you will know, going in and out of this building, that we use colored glass there to the judgment of most people in an attractive way. So we are piggybacking on that idea that when you use colored glass on the facade of a building, especially a parking garage, that you get a 24-hour benefit. So from when the daylight's on the outside, when you're a parking user, you get the benefit of that effect on the inside of the garage. And then at night, because the parking garage is lit internally, then you get the advantage of that art work on the exterior of the garage. So think stained glass. It's a similar principle to stained glass. The COTPA has adopted the color palette that we came up with for the Arts District garage, and they're applying that color palette throughout their system, so that if you park on the third floor of the Sheridan Walker or the third floor of the Arts District, or you park on the third floor of the new garage, the Convention Center garage, it would be the same color, coordinated colors. The vertical steel cable system, I think everybody's pretty familiar with the horizontal cable system that is used in a lot of garages. We are proposing to turn those cables vertically and run them on the exterior of the garage and attach either glass or colored plastic. small panels to the cable system. So all the materials consistent with the Arts District garage, we won't have any painted handrails or painted guardrails. It'll all be stainless for low maintenance and a attractive appearance.
And that's, can we go back to whatever picture somebody might want me to put up for discussion?
The renderings might be helpful.
I apologize. I'm actually going to excuse myself at the moment.
That was excuse and not recuse, right, Shelley? Okay. So we have, from the renderings, we have not rendered the elevations of the garage because, as yet, we really don't know what they will look like. We will go through, as you're probably aware, the city has a process for procuring public art. It goes through a vetting process, an interview process, and we're quite excited about the prospect of multiple artists proposing different ideas from which an idea will be selected and applied to these elevations.
And just for point of reference, the garage actually ends here where my hand is. You haven't seen the project to the north yet, but that's coming soon.
And as next rendering, we have landscape, we've used landscape elements wherever we can to soften the effect of the garage. The south elevation of the garage is either the glass-faced stair tower, then offices, the COTPA offices all along the first floor, and then a landscape barrier between the offices and the sidewalks. To Laura's point, we will need to seek a variance to have driveways this wide. We're very sensitive to the pedestrian experience, and there are multiple ways that we can deal with that. I think we've certainly been talking to our civil engineers and our landscape architects about paving, changing the paving so that the sidewalk zone is distinct and distinguished from the driveway apron. We can do that with stamped concrete or with striping, which I think I'd much rather do a pavement texture to differentiate the pedestrian zone from the driveway zone. We've also in the past used lights, warning lights for pedestrians that warn when vehicles are exiting. We did that on the Arts District garage. So we're still kind of finalizing some of those things, but we are sensitive to the fact that they're wide driveways. Next one.
The question, the 10-foot aisle, that's just in the location where you pass the threshold into the garage.
Correct, yeah. Laura's referencing a Public Works standard, but actually there's not a parking garage out there that conforms to that. So.
And then do you pay at those points when you pass through or something? I guess I'm just wondering if cars stop there. I don't need to know if people are necessarily paying. I guess maybe that's something that needs to be worked out. But there will be a pause, right? Multiple cars don't just drive.
If it's like the one we have now, and Corey you're welcome to talk. We just stop long enough to either pick up a ticket or flash our badge, and the gate opens and we go in.
There'll definitely be a pause. It'll be an automated garage, hourly garage, so people will pay before they get in the elevators and go back to their vehicles. Or when it's in an event, they'll interact with staff prior to entering into into the garage, so there will be a pause.
This is the EK Gaylord elevation. The reason we proposed bamboo was, I don't want to argue with Laura, but it's a very hardy plant, and there are different varietals of bamboo, and our proposal would be to use a dwarf version. And in our experience anyway, it is a hardy plant. It doesn't die off in the wintertime, and it's acclimatized to Oklahoma. There are examples of bamboo everywhere in Oklahoma where it provides a screening role. But it also, in this instance, one of the reasons we picked bamboo was because we don't want people passing from the garage to the sidewalk. There's a grade difference between the parking garage and the sidewalk. It's not much, it's just a couple of feet, but it presents a somewhat risky transition between the garage and the sidewalk. So we want, whatever we do there, we want to discourage people from trying to make that transition between the sidewalk and the garage, as well as providing a screen. So we thought the choice of bamboo was a good choice in that situation. I don't even know if plant material is under the purview of this. So that was our reasoning behind the bamboo. But it could be other things.
Is there anything else you want?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm open to answer any questions you might have.
I just have one technical question on the design of the elevations and either the glass or the plastic acrylic elements. That I assume would go through Arts Commission, and then would that come back to us at any point?
Yes,
Okay.
it would come back to you.
Okay, so that's good to know. Are there any questions for the applicant? I do have a couple questions. So first, for my own curiosity, the vertical cabling that's on the elevation shown here, it looks like at levels maybe 3, 4, and 5, that cabling is passing in front of the slab edge.
Exactly.
Is there something interior to that closes the gap between the edge and the cabling?
Oh, the cables do pass in front of the slab edge, but it's just like 3 inches or 2 inches or something like that.
Okay.
Just barely passes.
Okay, so it's not a place where you could put your foot in and...
No, the 4-inch sphere rule.
Okay.
Yeah, we're completely aware of that.
If we could go back to one of the site plans, looking at the entry on the west side.
Oh, wait.
That one's fine, or the blow-ups are fine as well. Actually, the blow-ups would be better. So, detail 1, the entrance to the west side. The area between the 4 two-way lanes and the 2 one-way lanes, yeah, exactly where the hand is. Is there a curb at that location?
We've been talking about that. Yes, right. Currently, it's a curb.
Okay.
Between the pedestrian zone and the sidewalk.
Between pedestrian zone and sidewalk. Between the pedestrian zone and the
street.
I'm sorry, the street. Between the pedestrian zone and the street.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes. The sidewalk and the street. There is a curb. That's as currently designed.
But the pedestrian is walking. Is the pedestrian at the street elevation, or are they up onto that curb?
Oh, I see what you're saying. They are at the street elevation.
Is there any reason for that rather than getting them off of the street?
I don't know how to get them off.
Okay.
Or explain.
To where there's so as it's as it's, the way I'm interpreting it, the way it's drawn right now, somebody is walking that whole length.
Right.
At street level.
Correct.
Was there any reason not to, in that middle median section, not to have the pedestrian path step up onto a curb and then down off a curb?
Sure, we could do that.
But let me just say, that's something that staff goes, we want the pedestrian way to be consistent. We didn't want it to.
Okay.
Right, that's how it is in most of the Project 180 streetscapes, where the pedestrian sidewalk path is level the entire way, and the driveways meet the pedestrian level as opposed to the opposite. That's something we beg and plead our applicants to achieve.
I mean, we could ramp up and then ramp down.
No, I think, this is helping, this is just from my understanding. I'm not necessarily advocating.
The new garage at the Bank of Oklahoma Tower on the corner of Hudson and Main, it's designed that way. Sheridan and Walker is designed that way.
Is the thought that eliminates a potential trip condition?
Yes, and maybe more so, it prioritizes the pedestrian. It's saying the pedestrian way always has the priority and the clear path in downtown, and that the cars need to stop or make a change to meet the pedestrian.
Okay.
We not to get into the weeds here, but there's an additional challenge with the garage, which is it has a mandated floor level due to flood control. And so the transition between the street and the garage is actually quite challenging in terms of gradient. Mm-hmm. So the reason the ramps and the sidewalk are where they are is to maintain that quarter-inch cross slope. We can't have them on the ramp. So the idea is that for the pedestrian anyway, we maintain that quarter-inch per foot cross slope and we keep it to the street as far as we can, and yet protect them in that little island that you're looking at.
That's why that pedestrian path is further west and out of alignment with the sidewalks to the north and south?
Actually, the
south is here.
So the handicap.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I read that wrong.
Handicap ramp is right there at the west edge.
It's at the edge.
Yeah.
Okay. I was reading those inverted at the north and south. Okay. Well, in the regard of, so that helps just clarify what's going on in that median. I fully am on board with what you described as far as identifying that path with a different texture through the drive lanes.
We will certainly do that.
Two more questions. You mentioned the potential to expand to 1,400 spaces. Is that, I assume, up?
Yes.
Okay.
We could go down, but it'd be really expensive.
Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, the cast-in-place elements on the building, is that raw concrete? Is there any treatment to that? Is that is there a thought process between construction joints, or maybe if you could talk a little bit more about how that cast-in-place is going to finish out?
Sure. So the cast-in-place components certainly will have construction joints, and they'll be designed in probably on the floor. The floor-to-floor is a 12-foot floor-to-floor, typically. So we'll have certainly, as an architect, you'll know that the pours will be defined at least to every 12 feet. So we'll have, there'll be a pattern on the port in place. On the exterior, we've talked to our structural engineers about all the concrete on the exterior would have steel forms, so it would be smooth and probably have a very light texture. But in the spirit of low maintenance / no maintenance, we probably would not propose a coating. But, so it would be architectural concrete, but on the exterior. Everything on the exterior would be architectural concrete.
Is that similar to what's at the Arts Garage?
No, it's not, actually. It does not have an architectural finish.
Okay.
A specified architectural finish.
Okay. Those are all the questions I had. Are there any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion? Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? No? Okay.
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with the conditions that the applicant work with the staff to address pedestrian movement across the access/exit driveways, that the applicant work with staff to study the screening of the parked vehicles from adjacent right-of-way, and that the applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustments from the maximum overall width of driveways and minimum width of individual driveways.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
There was a Krieger-Richards motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, I'd also like to make a motion that we provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the maximum overall width of driveways and minimum width of individual driveways.
I'll second.
Again, that was Krieger-Richards. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Application is approved.
I appreciate it. I would also like to say, because I sat in your seat back when the DDRC was conceived, and I really appreciate the time you spend and the deliberation and the thoughtfulness that you apply to these applications. I particularly appreciated your conversation about the signage on the Arts District Garage, because we proposed larger signage back at the time when we designed it, and this body overturned that proposal and made us do smaller signs that were ground mounted. So it's interesting, but I sincerely appreciate the deliberation and the thought that you give to those kinds of issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have misplaced my agenda, not
That's the end.
fully anticipating.
Oh, you're hooked up. Sorry.
We have no other business. We have a couple items on the communications report. And are there any comments from planning and staff?
We have a meeting next month that has just as large an agenda. So please check your calendars, and you might want to bring a lunch. But anyway.
But you guys did such a fantastic
You did yes, you did.
2
And our agenda
hours.
just got larger because we just added 3 items to the agenda from earlier. Yeah.
Do we have any comments from committee members? No? Our next meeting is Thursday, May 16th, 2019. New applications must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, April 16th, 2019. Revisions and information on continued projects are to be submitted by April 23rd, 2019. With that, meeting is adjourned.